The latest news, national issues, the political scene, and conversations with prominent personalities. All these firsthand at the forefront. On behalf of Atty. Karen Jimeno, this is Maricar Bautista. The Energy Regulatory Commission has approved more than 19.958 billion peso refund for Meralco customers, set to be implemented over a 3-year period. The decision has sparked debate, with concerns about its impact on consumers and the rationale behind the chosen timeline. In the meantime, the ERC continues to navigate challenges in regulating electricity rates while promoting renewable energy initiatives. How does the Commission balance consumer welfare, industry interests, and the country's green energy goals? Joining us this morning live at the BNC studio is the Chairperson of the Energy Regulatory Commission, Atty. Monalisa Dimalanta. Good morning, Chair Mona.
Good morning, Maricar. Good morning, everyone.
Yes, very much good to see you, ma'am.
Good to see you.
Okay. So straight away,
yes,
let's discuss why is there a refund and how did Meralco overcharge its consumers?
Okay. There is actually, normally there are situations wherein refunds or what we call collection also situations can arise for distribution utilities because there is always a preset cap for revenues that they will get. It's divided usually among their customer base. And because a customer base of a utility usually grows, that's what we want, that they grow their customer base. There's a consequential overcollection over a period of time. But what has happened with Meralco is that there has not been a rate review of Meralco's rates for a long time. So this tranche, there was a previous tranche of refund granted by the ERC, I think sometime in 2021 to early 2022. That was for the longer period where there has not been a reset. For this particular period, this covers July 2022 to December 2024, where there has been an overcollection by Meralco because, as I mentioned earlier, their consumer base also grows. So instead of, for example, they have a set collection, just to simplify, they're allowed by the ERC to earn 100 divided by 100 people, for example, customer base. So 1 peso to collect so that they earn their 100 pesos at the end of the year. But since their customer base has grown by 10, for example, so they have collected 110 instead of just 100. So they have to return the 10 as the overcharged amounts. That's very simple explanation. But in this case, that's what happened. They have overcollected beyond their allowed returns.
Okay, so meron pa ring limit
Meron naman. Meron, yes. For regulated utilities like Meralco and NGCP and other private distribution utilities, meron po tayong cap dun sa earnings.
So it's not correct really to say that it's overcharging because it's really different, overcharging from overcollecting.
It's overcollection. It's overcollection.
Overcollection. Yes. Okay. How did the overcollection, which you already mentioned, no? So what is under recovery? What exactly does that mean?
Under recovery is, as I mentioned earlier, there's a preset amount that utility can earn. If for whatever reason, for example, let's go back to my example earlier, they're allowed to collect 100 divided by 100 customers. But for whatever reason, for example, the utility lost 10 customers because, and it has happened in some of our electric cooperative areas, a flood happens or a volcanic eruption happens, it wiped out an entire barangay. So they lost 10 people. So instead of collecting 100, they just collected 90. So they have under-recovered in that sense. So they are going to be entitled for that deficiency of 10 to be divided among the 90. So that results in an increase. An under-collection or under-recovery will result in an increase at the end of the review period.
Okay, so meron nangyaring mga under-recovery?
Meron po. Meron ding mga ganyan. Actually, sa ating mga electric cooperatives, madalas nangyayari yung mga under-recovery po natin. Yeah.
Okay, pero hindi naman siguro gawa-gawa lang to. There is really basis?
That's what the commission, that's the job of the commission, to determine whether claims for under-recoveries actually are substantiated, or claims for refund, like what has happened with Meralco, is limited to that amount that they have offered. For example, the 19.9
Yes.
that we have currently approved provisionally for refund, we're still determining whether that's really all that there is,
Okay.
to simplify the terms, because there's a hearing ongoing to determine the basis of Meralco. So we're still, that's why it's still under provisional authority. Plus, they were ordered to file for July 2022 all the way to June 2025.
Okay.
So there will be another tranche of
Okay.
refund applications.
But how come the under-recovery was rejected?
Well, because it's still under evaluation. Because the commission has not confirmed whether there really has been an over-refund. They claim that they over-refunded last time. And whether the over-refund is in the amounts that they have claimed to have over-refunded. So it's still under evaluation.
And most likely, when will you finish the evaluation?
Most likely after June, because they said that they can only file for the January to June period sometime July. So we'll have to wait until they're filing for that one before we wrap everything up.
So in the meantime, on hold muna yung refund? Because I
No.
heard
We-
it will commence next month?
Yes, correct. So we do not wait anymore for the full period, since that's why we had to issue that provisional authority, so that the consumers of Meralco can already enjoy at least a part of the refund.
But if there would be some changes, so what happens then? Kung
Then there'll
bababa
be
yan?
there'll be an adjustment of the amounts. That's not unusual. There are adjustments that have been made. So we constantly reconcile the figures so that adjustments can be made in the subsequent months.
Again, going back, you mentioned about the cap for Meralco. How much is this?
I cannot recall now the cap that was approved, because that was and this I mentioned earlier. I think the last reset for Meralco's rates was back in 2015, and that's why there are also consumer groups that are claiming that the 1 peso 35, that's the average rate that Meralco charges consumers. That's an average among the consumer classes, 1 peso 35 centavos per kilowatt hour. Some consumer groups are claiming that's already too high, but the commission has not reset, or what we call the rate reset, has not concluded a rate review of Meralco. We're doing it now for the prospective period of July 2025 to 2028.
Okay. Kindly correct me, because there are several figures coming up. How did the ERC arrive at the 0.1189 centavos per kilowatt hour refund rate? Is that a correct figure? And could the refund amount change after the final evaluation?
The 1189, let's round it off to 12 centavos. It's the average rate, refund rate, if we consider all the customer classes. For the residential customers, actually, it gets to 20 centavos per kilowatt hour. So more refunds for our residential customers. But that number is the number that's applied by Meralco. So Meralco put it forward on the basis of the 19 billion that they claim to be refunded. As I mentioned earlier, they divided it among the consumer classes that they have, and they've arrived at the average 11. So there has really been, and this is one of the issues I had with the majority decision. There were discrepancies among our records and Meralco's records, and we've seen that in the initial evaluation. But I think the majority went with as what was Meralco applied for, meaning what Meralco put in their application, because this is still a provisional authority. So to answer the second question, yes, it can still be subject to changes once we have completed the evaluation, once the hearings have have concluded once the evidence are offered by the parties and the Commission has done a full, thorough evaluation of Meralco's
So
application.
that's either higher or lower?
It can be higher or lower, yeah, but I think very limited space for it to be lower since Meralco is the one that already offered that amount. So, but we will conclude it once we have all the documents, all the evidence submitted to the Commission.
But Chair Moni, you mentioned earlier that there are discrepancies. So where are they stemming from?
Meralco put that number in their application, but that 19 billion number in the application. But when our technical staff check the monthly reports, all distribution utilities are required to submit monthly reports to the Commission of their charges. Once our staff collated from the monthly reports of Meralco, it did not quite match the number that was presented by Meralco in the application. So that's why and I put this anyway in my dissent, it's public, I said, given that those discrepancies, we need to check other documents to vet against what Meralco had submitted. So, and there are other publicly available documents anyway, also coming from Meralco, like their disclosures to the stock exchange of their earnings and all these. But maybe we will get to that during the final. I'm hoping that we will get to that during the final evaluation of the Commission. But in the meantime, we have authorized based on the application alone.
But was it a big discrepancy?
Not quite a huge discrepancy from what we had seen, but we haven't. Our staff has not really looked at other publicly available documents.
So in that case, then the changes may be just minimal, if ever. Or even the adjustments.
Yeah, maybe. It's frankly it's too early to tell because one other aspect of the refund is not just the collections of Meralco from their distribution business, but also their earnings from their related businesses like their generation business and retail business. Because under the law, 50% of those earnings should be given back to lower the rates of their distribution rates for their consumers.
Okay. So was that the only agreement or disagreement that you had with the other or the rest of the members of the?
Well, the other issue I had was really the period for the refund. In Meralco's application, they offered a 36-month refund period. I did not agree with the 36-month period. I believe it needed to be shorter. Definitely not longer than 1 year because under Supreme Court decisions, this is quite settled. Any provisional authority issued by the Commission cannot have an effect longer than 1 year. So I found it very difficult to find basis for a provisional authority that would have an effect longer than the 1 year. That's one. Second, when the Commission previously ordered, I wasn't part of the Commission then, a refund of Meralco's rates as well. There was a shorter period for a longer over-collection period. This one, it's an over-collection of 18 months. Why would we allow a refund period that's twice as long as the over-collection? So if we approximate what was acted upon by the Commission, what was decided by the Commission before, actually we arrive at only 10 months, a refund period of only 10 months.
So what you're saying in a way, it would be hardly felt by the consumers if it's a prolonged refund.
Correct.
But what do you think is the rationale, or what's the rationale behind the decision of the three others?
Yeah, I think the Commission decided to adopt what was in the application of Meralco because it was anyway, it was a provisional authority. It's still subject to the final decision of the Commission. I think that was their basis. Yeah.
Okay. Do you think Meralco has the funds? They can actually.
Yes.
They're capable of refunding.
That's one of the points that I also that I also made in my dissent. The Commission, if you review the decisions of the Commission, there were times that the Commission allowed for a longer refund period. But this is because the utility would explain normally that they would, it would compromise their operations if they would be required to refund such a big amount in such a short period. So to avoid compromising the operations of the Commission because of impaired cash flow, because of the refund, then the Commission would allow for a longer period. Normally, this happens in our electric cooperatives because they're non-stock, non-profit entities, right? So I pointed out in my dissent that there was nothing in the submissions that show that Meralco is in the same position as our, as previously considered by the Commission as compromising the operations of the utility. So in other words, there was no showing that if we had shortened the period, Meralco would face hardship in conducting their business. Absent that showing, we should, at least that was my position, we should stick to what the Supreme Court has authorized us to do and what was consistent with the previous decisions of the Commission.
But, can correct me if I'm wrong, but I recall that there has been a refund before amounting to 40 billion.
Yes.
So how long did that take?
I think that one was over 2 years, if I recall correctly, or even shorter.
Is that
than
reasonable?
2 years. Well, the commission decided it at the time. I wasn't part of the commission. It was a huge amount. Definitely, I don't think anyone would dispute that 40 billion is a huge amount. So a 2-year refund period sounds reasonable for that during that time. Yeah.
So then 20 billion, let's round it off. So you don't think that 3 years, that it's quite unreasonable for you?
I think it's not commensurate.
Commensurate.
I think, for one, as I mentioned earlier, it's a refund period that's even longer than the overcollection period.
Right.
That one, I think, in terms of fairness, I think I find it, I struggle to accept it in terms of fairness. But also, as I mentioned earlier, because the Supreme Court has already limited their authority to 1 year for provisional approvals.
Yeah. Also, there has been, Senator Risa Hontiveros, at least is thankful in a way that there would be a refund. But for her, it's not enough. And she is citing also a figure, at least 100 B. Do you have what's your sentiment, or what do you think about it?
Yeah, I think the 100 billion comes from filings, positions of certain groups that are also interveners in the Meralco rate cases. And that number contemplates what they have computed from the time that there has been no reset, so from 2015 onward. So I think it covers a longer period. But for that period, there was already, as mentioned earlier, a refund that was ordered by the Commission for 40 billion. So even if we add 40 plus 60, maybe the discrepancy we're talking about is around 40 again, because that's 60 billion in total of the 100. But we are still reviewing the rate reset for Meralco. So we don't know yet. I think it will be preemptive for me to say anything about the reset. We don't know yet whether that figure will arise from the reset or another figure will arise. But we will have to review the basis for the 100 billion that was claimed. Those are being considered also by the Commission via the interveners that are participating in the proceedings.
So is it possible that there could be more refund in the future?
It's possible. I think it's definitely it's a definite for the January to June 2025. We're already expecting that. We're already expecting another round of refund for that. That's a given. How much that is, we still don't know. But definitely there will be for this period because that's still covered by the order of the Commission.
Again, what date is this? What period?
January 2025 to June 2025. So
2025,
this coming, where we're in March already, so 3 more months, and then Meralco will file another, will make another filing.
Okay. Is this due to overcollection as well?
Yes.
Okay. For what period?
For this is still covered by the July 2022 to June 2025. That was the period that was really covered by the order of the Commission. But Meralco was saying, well, January to June 2025 has not lapsed yet, so we don't know the numbers yet. So we'll wait till July to make that
So
filing.
there's really a need to do a reset.
Yes.
Otherwise, it would still continue to recur.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. The reset is really what we're all aiming for, and you know, well, one, a reset, but also I think a proper reset, not just any reset for the sake of having a reset, but a proper reset, which is what we're trying to do now.
But we're only talking about Meralco. How about the others?
They will follow suit because there has not been a reset for all private utilities for the same period.
But how come?
I think there are, there have been congressional hearings on this, really trying to get to the bottom of what has happened because, you know, that's almost 10 years is a really long time. 2015, 2016, when the last resets were done. I think for one, there was a period really, admittedly, in the Commission where there were a lot of political issues that affected the Commission. There were months, sometime I think 2016, 2017, where there was no sitting commission. All 5 commissioners were suspended because of various charges.
And that really affected everything.
It does. Because as I mentioned, the resets are actually supposed to happen on a 4-year rolling period for the distribution utilities and 5 years for the transmission operator for NGCP. Once you interrupt that period, like that period, months where there's no sitting commission, that situation affects the timeline of the reset. It affects all the pending, it delays the decisions on pending power supply, approvals for power supply agreements. So all regulatory actions are suspended during that period where there is no sitting commission. So and then it snowballs to until that period when a proper commission can function. So it's really tragic how these things progress. But that's one. There are also reasons. Once the commission came back, there was no proper procurement. There were failed procurement for consultants, and consultants are quite necessary for the very complex process of reset that the Commission has adopted. So
several factors that came into play.
Several factors that we have seen so far.
Okay. You mentioned about political issues. Like, what were these issues then?
At that time, again, I wasn't part of the Commission then, but at the time, there were issues with respect to leadership in the Commission. There was also a period when the commissioners were exchanging charges against each other. So it was quite complex. It was quite muddy that period. And the institution, you know, the sector pays for it, the institution pays for it.
Okay, but how do you ensure that that won't happen this time?
I think number one, what I've really when I joined the Commission in August 2022, the first thing that I really have been pushing for and continue to push for is really transparency in all our dealings. Our dealings with our stakeholders, our dealings internally transparency and then accountability, because I think we need to strengthen the institution. So it's not just a matter of coming out with decisions just for the sake of, of clearing our docket or clearing our backlog, which is also huge. But I think we need to strengthen the institution so that it can withstand these political pressures. I think political pressures in the nature of the work of the Commission is par for the course. We need to accept it as a reality, but we need to strengthen the institution so that it can withstand all these pressures.
Okay. Now going back to the refund, no. So how will the refund be monitored and implemented? Is there a mechanism for consumers to provide feedback on the refund process?
Yes, definitely. Well, the implementation is on a monthly basis. Starting this April. So we will see it in our bills. Our bills will have that additional, our power bills from Meralco, if you are a Meralco consumer, will have that additional line called what refund collect. And corresponding to it is the amount of refund that you're getting. So it effectively works when you total the bill as a discount on your bill. It will, as mentioned earlier, that will happen, that spread over a 36-month period, or if Meralco is able to already refund the 19.9 billion before the 36 months, then that ends the period. Meralco is also required to submit reports to us on a regular basis, I think monthly as well, on the status of the refund. So that's the way we monitor the refund.
Okay, so
consumers,
Go ahead.
No, for the final question, consumers can monitor, can also give us feedback. One, in the formal process, consumers can participate, and there are consumer groups participating in the hearings. And consumers, we have an open line to our consumers via our consumer services division in the Commission.
Okay, Meralco announced an increase on rates starting this month. Will this increase negate the refund? But before you answer this, at the forefront, we'll return back after a short break. Meralco announced an increase on rates starting this month. Will this increase negate the refund? Okay, so while we were on the break, you mentioned about the proposed three-year timeline, but you said that this could still change.
Yes, that could still change because that's still that was the period provided under the provisional authority that was issued by the Commission. So we will still deliberate on the final decision for this case, and I'm hoping that we will all get an alignment on the period. So it could still be shorter, hopefully not longer, but it's still subject to change.
Yes, but how soon can we hear from you the final decision with regards to the timeline?
It cannot be earlier than June, so it will be sometime July because Meralco will still file for the January to June period. They said early July, so maybe we can come out with it late July or early August.
But you're optimistic that there would be a change?
I remain hopeful. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
They will go by or with 1 year. 1 year. At
I
least.
hope so. Yes.
Okay. How often does the ERC require utilities to justify their rates?
Well, the justification comes during the rate reset. That's why it's very crucial for the ERC to always do regularly the reset, because that's the only time, that's the reckoning point, right? So it's every 4 years for our distribution utilities and 5 years for NGCP, our system operator.
Okay. What lessons have ERC learned from the case that could influence future regulatory decisions?
I think there are many lessons that we as a commission today have learned from this exercise. One, I think there is no doubt that it is crucial, and I hope this is not just a realization on the part of the commission. This is really relevant for all stakeholders, including the other branches of government, all branches of government, how critical it is for us, for the ERC, to conduct the reset in a timely manner. So I hope that, well, we are doing our best moving forward for the ERC to be not just be ready for it, but really fully capacitated to do it. That budgets will be prepared, because there was a time that there were no budgets given to ERC for the consultancies. And as I mentioned earlier, consultancies are critical for the ERC to conduct its regulatory mandate. So capacitated to do it in terms of budget, capacitated also in terms of the personnel. We need to keep training our personnel so that they are prepared to undertake this work. It's a tough work, reset. I think I commiserate with if the previous commission found it very difficult, because it is a difficult task.
Are you currently undermanned?
Yes.
By how
Yes.
many?
We have a plantilla of only 300 personnel. We oversee 121 private utilities, almost 300 generation companies all over the country. So it's quite a huge business to oversee, and we're happy that that the industry has grown this much over the last years, but the commission has not grown in terms of organization, and that's why we have a pending bill in Congress also for reorganization.
And you would need at least how many?
I think
so you can address
we need to, I think our ask was with the DBM, we have a pending request for DBM of additional 100 personnel. But I think more than the number of personnel, we need to be enabled to reorganize so that we can also follow the development we can match the development of the industry. We cannot be, right now it's quite static. The organization is quite static. It's the same setup that was developed in 2002, 2003 when the commission was first established. But the industry has evolved so much since then.
So you have to adjust accordingly.
Yes. So those are the things that I think we need to work on, and hopefully will be given to us, will be acknowledged, and we are given the proper authorities so that we can really perform our mandate.
So would you say na at least more than 20 years yung backlog when it comes to personnel?
For personnel, yes.
And how come this was not attended to for all these years?
I don't know. I think there were attempts really to do it. There were like as early as, well, not as early, but as recent as maybe pre-pandemic, there was an ERC strengthening bill that was passed in Congress and also in the Senate. Well, proposed in Congress and Senate, but did not really progress. The progress has been over the last 12 months, where the bill, a new bill was proposed in Congress. In the House, we moved all the way to second reading. In the Senate, we are still at the Committee of Energy. So I don't know if in this Congress we will be able to get the bill passed, but hopefully in the next Congress.
Kindly enlighten us. Do you rely on budget from the government, or you do generate revenues?
We do generate revenues, but everything is remitted to the National Treasury. So we don't keep a single peso that we collect. We are fully dependent on the budget, on the national budget.
And so for the allocation, how is it? One thing.
No, we do get a fair share, I think, because as I mentioned in our last budget hearing, because we do have offers from very supportive members of Congress that say we will give you more than what the president's budget, for example, would give us. But I think more important to us than the amount is the ability to, as I mentioned earlier, to reorganize. Because if we are stuck with an organization that is just consuming those budget without the proper organization, that's a waste, I think. So I think we need to first reorganize and then ask for the proper budget that fits the new organization.
But the current budget of ERC amounts to how much?
I think 900 million for this year. We did not breach 1 billion for this year.
But preferably,
I think our ask was 1.2, just a little. But we can make do with what we were with what we're given. We have no complaints about our budget. We will be able to make do with it. What's more important, as I mentioned earlier, is that ability to really reorganize.
but you're on your way to addressing this.
Yes, with the bill. That's why I'm hoping that it will get past Congress soon.
Okay, so how does the ERC ensure fair competition among power providers while protecting consumers?
Okay. Well, it's good that you mentioned that, because as we continue to deregulate, that's really the direction that EPIRA had set. We allow consumers to choose their own suppliers, and we're getting there. Just last year, in August last year, we passed a resolution that allows now consumers to aggregate their load so that they can choose their own suppliers. And because we have seen that in 2023 to 2024, actually, consumers that chose their own suppliers were able to save more than 1 peso, sometimes 2 pesos less than in their generation rate. So that's a huge amount. And in fact, last year, our consumers in the contestable, we call them contestable market, those who are able to choose their own suppliers, were able to save 18.5 billion pesos in electricity, in their electricity bills. But as we continue to allow consumers to choose their own suppliers, we can and we should allocate proper time, attention, and resources to managing the competition in the market, to making sure that we really have a healthy, competitive space, particularly in our generation and supply sectors. Right now, we have, as I mentioned earlier, around 300 power companies, but we have 5 dominant groups in those 300. So it's still a moderately concentrated market. So we need to push more in terms of increasing competition in our market.
Okay, so you mentioned that consumers have options. They can choose suppliers. But here in Metro Manila, do we?
Yes, definitely. In fact,
like where?
Anywhere in Metro Manila, in the Meralco franchise area, for example, we have already facilitated the switch. We call it the switch from the captive to the contestable market. We have the first switch from our water utility. One of the concessionaires aggregated their water treatment facilities so that they can meet the threshold. There is a threshold. There's a minimum demand, 500 kilowatt, so that they can meet that demand and choose their own supplier. And they realize savings for it. We also facilitated the switch of a school. It's a school system with 3 locations in Metro Manila. They aggregated the load of those three locations and then chose a renewable energy supply. They are now supplied 24/7 by renewable energy. So anywhere in Metro Manila now, there are certain conditions. For example, they have to be of a common ownership, or they have the same business enterprise, like a water utility, as I mentioned earlier. They can aggregate their load. It's the retail aggregation program. It's really what we're very excited about, because we want consumers to really enjoy the savings from aggregating their load. So it can happen now.
But I don't think not too many are aware of it. So how do we go about it? Do we have to go to our LGUs?
No.
How?
There's a sub-site in the ERC website called buyyourelectricity.com, bye.com. You can choose suppliers there. These are retail suppliers accredited by the Energy Regulatory Commission. There are average rates of their suppliers, so you can literally go shopping for the supply that is affordable to you.
So fair competition.
Yes, and you can reach out to them. They will be the ones who can help you aggregate. But also from the consumer side, for example, our villages, for example, through their homeowners association, can aggregate their load. And the association can be the one that will look for the supplier that has the rate that is acceptable to to everyone. In the next few weeks, we are hoping to facilitate the switch of a banking chain. I just met with a group last week in an event. This is a food chain that's looking to aggregate their load, and this is really what EPIRA had envisioned before, for consumers to be able to choose the supplier and negotiate for the rate that they want. By the way, these rates are not, we do not impose, the ERC does not impose the rates for these contracts. But you will see in what we facilitate is the information, the access to information. So you will see the average rates, compare the prices of suppliers, and see what fits your requirements.
But was this available way before? And
no.
It started when?
It was available to large consumers before. So if you're consuming an average of 500 kilowatt, as I mentioned earlier, you were allowed to contract your own. It started with 1 megawatt consumer, so meaning the large shopping malls, for instance, they can do this. But last year, August, we expanded the scope of what we call the retail aggregation program by allowing any customer within the same franchise area of a utility to aggregate their load and meet the 500. So it's still at 500 kilowatt, but now you can join with your friends and relatives or whatever, your neighbors, as I mentioned earlier, and aggregate your load to meet the 500 and choose your own supplier.
Yes. So, do you plan to do info dissemination on this? Because not too many people are aware.
I know. Well, we don't have, we were talking about the budget earlier. We do not have much budget for the information campaign, but we have a lot of partners. So we work with partners so that we can disseminate this information.
Okay, so despite news about cheaper renewable energy sources being put up by big companies, how come consumers don't experience significantly lower electricity bills? That's what we're going to tackle next, Chair Mona. But before you answer this, at the forefront, we'll return after a short break.
Your newest source of news and information follows you everywhere, every day.
Wow, something to watch. Not just surprising.
On cable and free TV.
Good morning, everyone!
Online.
On Trade Talk, joining us this morning. Just days to go.
On mobile.
Simulan na natin ang agenda.
This is BNC, and we are everywhere.
Good morning, everyone!
Let's begin your morning with these people that gives you the hottest information.
I'm Pablo de Rosario. Let's get you up to speed with some news that you could use right now.
Rise and shine, beautiful people. I'm Ann S.S. Carillo. And I'm Monique Tuzon. Your mornings are always no fun with us.
With excitement,
It was amazing.
positivity,
Everything is so beautifully made here.
and fun to start your day.
Only here on...
It's a beautiful day!
Welcome back at the forefront. Despite news about cheaper renewable energy sources being put up by big companies, how come consumers don't experience significantly lower electricity rates, or rather bills? Are the solar and wind farms already supplying electricity providers? Okay, but before we proceed, we had a very interesting exchange. So we were talking about this yung aggregate and then consumer being or having these options. How big is the difference? Since they can offer varying rates.
Yes. Well, we've seen offers from suppliers that can go as low as 2 pesos lower, 2 pesos cheaper than what a consumer would normally get charged by the distribution
And that's
utility.
quite big.
It is quite big, and I think what's good is that it doesn't just mean a lower rate or savings for the consumers itself. Like when I mentioned earlier, our RAP, we call it RAP, Retail Aggregation Program, our RAP champion for education. So the savings of the school can now be invested to better facilities for the
Yes.
students, or even possibly lower tuition fee rates or higher salaries for their teachers. That's really what we're hoping for, that the savings will be an investment towards something else, investment to education, better education. For the utility RAP champion, it could mean that they could invest that money to improve the services of their of the consumers in their concession area, or even lower the bills of their consumers.
So they can at least reallocate for
Yes.
things that need funding more.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
So please, hopefully that we can have more information dissemination on
Yes.
this, because it's really, really very important, especially to many of us.
Correct.
Okay. So the Philippines has one of the highest electricity prices in Asia, which is a turnoff to many foreign investors. What more can be done to reduce electricity costs in the country?
Okay. So, well, the first thing that, well, as we were talking about retail aggregation earlier, it's really something that is exciting to, not just for us in the power sector, but more for our investors, because now, and also for the financing community, because now investors we need more power generation sources in the country to improve not just the rates, because if we have more supply, then we have more chances of lowering the rates, but also to improve reliability in the system, so that an outage of one plant will not result in, immediate blackout. So we need to increase supply. But suppliers are reliant on financing reliant on financing sectors, and the banks normally would look for what we call an anchor PPA, or an anchor offtake contract, and normally they would look to the distribution utilities to provide that. But what we're saying to the banks, and we've had with much thanks to the Bangko Sentral facilitating the exchanges, dialogue, we have explained to the banks, but that with retail aggregation, you actually don't need distribution utilities to be your anchor customer anymore. You can have, for example, an aggregated, as I mentioned earlier, an aggregated load among banks, a chain of banks, or a chain supply a food chain, to be your anchor offtake contract, or even a chain of real estate companies in their realty development. So we now have a new revenue stream, or a new market that's open for our financing opportunity. So this really, I think, changes the game in terms of how we finance power development projects in the Philippines, and that's how we lower the rates. Aside from consumers accessing directly the lower rates from what is published, and they can, as I mentioned earlier, they can shop for the rates lower, and that will meet their requirements.
Okay. So now, how is the ERC supporting the growth of renewable energy sources in the country?
Well, our role in terms of renewable energy is really supportive to the Department of Energy. The Department of Energy is the policymaker. They have set the goals for the growth of renewable energy sector. As regulator, we do not really dictate where to go in terms of our energy transition journey, but we are required to support the policy maker. And the policy maker, DOE, had set these goals for us: 35% by 2030, 50% by 2040. So we support them by coming out with the rates that apply to the auctions that are conducted by the DOE. So we really are just rate setters in terms of the renewable energy exercise.
What's the ERC stand on the push for nuclear energy? Is there still a strong opposition, or you're open about it?
In the same manner that we are supportive of the policies of the Department of Energy, we also defer to the Department of Energy in terms of the policy for nuclear. We are studying it, preparing for it, because the DOE had included nuclear in the Philippine Energy Plan. So we must, this is what I mentioned earlier, capacitating the regulator to meet the evolution of the industry. So we need to start preparing now if if the projects do come on stream. So we have currently there's a mission in Canada at the moment, Philippine mission to Canada to study the nuclear regulatory framework there, and we have representatives in that mission.
And I know that there are several big companies that are really
Yes.
setting their sights on nuclear energy.
Correct. Because it was included by the DOE in the Philippine Energy Plan.
Okay, for the last question, can consumers look out for cheaper electricity?
I wish I could. It would be an easy yes, right? But I think in the long term, yes, because there are several projects, both from the DOE side and the ERC side, that we are pursuing in parallel to get us to that. So I think in the long term, yes, that's what we are looking out for. But we need to make sure first that the supply situation improves, so that, as I mentioned earlier, we have better chances. There was a question earlier on renewable energy, lowering the rates. But we are not yet at that sweet spot of that capacity from renewable energy to really make a dent in our electricity bills. But we will get there as drawn up, according to the plans drawn up by the DOE, and then we look forward to that day. But in the meantime, what we need to make sure of is that we'll all still be intact by the time that happens, right? So we have to bridge ourselves to get there.
Okay, thank you very much, Chairperson Monalisa Dimalanta. We have discussed so many, and we'll continue to watch out, especially the info dissemination, please.
Yes.
We shall await for it.
Thank you very much.
Okay. The Energy Regulatory Commission's decision on the Meralco refund highlights the delicate balance between protecting consumer interests and ensuring regulatory stability. While the refund offers some relief to consumers, it also raises questions about the pace and fairness of such measures. Moving forward, the ERC's role in fostering transparency, accountability, and sustainable energy solutions will remain crucial in addressing the nation's energy challenges. Be timely informed, be insightful of the news, always stay at the forefront. Join us again tomorrow for meaningful conversations that would help you form an objective personal opinion. On behalf of Attorney Karen Jimeno, this is Maricar Bautista. Thank you for spending your hour with us.